Welcome to the Crazy Agent Dinner Party. Part group therapy, part inspiration, entirely for real estate agents to dish on this crazy business we're in. And remember, real estate is crazy, and you don't have to be. Here are your hostesses with the mostesses, a combined 40 plus years in real estate, Coach Konversion Kourtney, and the real estate mom you never knew you needed, Amanda, the marketing mama. On today's menu, we're dishing up first time to forever buyers.
Jenny, thank you so much, our beautiful and trusty sidekick. Buyers, have you worked with them this week, agents? I bet that's probably why you need this group therapy and obviously a little bit of inspiration we're going to bring with you today, because our whole goal every single week when we gather together is to help you guys sell more real estate, but more importantly, have way more fun doing it, because we've been doing it since Jesus was a baby, a long, long time, and we love it, and we want you to love it as much as we do. And I love first-time buyers. I feel like that's the backbone of our industry, right?
It is.
It really, really
absolutely.
is.
At one point, somebody buys a house. If they're buying a house, right? They're going to be a first-time buyers.
Right. And then you can turn them into a forever buyer. And we're going to talk about that today. Mm-hmm. But for starters, let's talk about a little bit of an outside-the-box first-time buyer. I was in LA with Courtney for the E17 TV Hostopia conference. And on speakerphone, while we were getting ready for the day, she was speaking to one of her first-time buyers. And it was not a traditional first-time buyer. So for starters, let's just dig into the first-time buyer.
Yeah, I think like the conception of a first-time buyer, when somebody says a first-time buyer, it is somebody maybe coming out of college, a family just getting started, and that's not always the case, right? So I was working with somebody who's in their 60s, and it was literally their first home, and I was so excited.
Honestly, hearing the excitement in her voice and yours, my heart was bursting. It made me so happy because she was leaving this legacy for her family, which is why we love real estate.
And really, if somebody looks at it, they're like, why is she getting into a 30-year loan? And it's like everybody has their own different reasons, right? Mm-hmm. And so a first-time buyer, or any buyer, especially a first-time buyer, though, like they understand the importance of buying real estate and building wealth and being able to leave that as a legacy. And for her, that's what it was about. And so I was really freaking excited about it.
Absolutely. Because that equity is like having a part-time job that you don't have to go to work. Your house is working for you by making you money every year with appreciation. So we love that. So I really do love the fact that we've both been doing this for 20 plus years. And yet we still both really, really enjoy working with the first-time buyer. That same weekend, I was writing an offer for one of my first-time buyers, who was the 23-year-old, just recently out of college, just recently engaged. And it is so much fun. Because really from an agent standpoint, I love the process of educating them through the entire process. And I love just seeing how excited they are because they've never done it before. It's like they're really they are a bit more panicky than maybe a move-up buyer, somebody you've worked with a lot. But it's your opportunity to really solidify a lifelong relationship with somebody. And that should be your goal when you're working with somebody, right? You want to be their go-to person.
Guide them through the process,
right?
Right? That's exactly what we do is we guide them through the process. Mm-hmm. And in reality, too, like I have somebody who sold 3 homes this year, and it's still guiding them through the process. Mm-hmm. With a first-time buyer, it is imperative as a real estate agent that we walk them through every step and what to expect next. And so that's what I love about it, is because every single time I get to go back to the beginning and walk them through the entire process of what it looks like and what process we're going to go through, right?
Well, and it's really important with any buyer, but especially a first-timer, because of how anxious that they are. And so I look to real estate a lot like being a mom. I have 4 kids, and so all my kids are all different, but one of my kids, Tucker, who is wonderful, he is the type of person that needs to know the goings about of the day, and that helps him to be really successful in his day. He wants to know literally like step by step. I love that about him. He might get that from me. I don't know. But either way, kind of working with buyers, or with first-time buyers, it's kind of the same thing. You have to let them know what to anticipate next, and you have to really not just be their tour guide, but guide them through the process, let them know what's going on next. And here's what I hear a lot from some of my agents. They're like, well, I sent them an email, and I sent that to them by email. It's in the home buyer packet. Okay, people are not. I love my home buyer packet. I think it's great. I love it. Are people reading it? More than likely not. Maybe they will. Hopefully they do. I think it's pretty good.
Well, I think it's the type of person, right? Somebody who's very analytical is definitely reading it.
Right.
Somebody who's not and they're more just emotional, they may not be reading it.
But you shouldn't assume that they have read it and that they don't need you. Like, they need you. That's why we're here, right? You want to build that relationship. And so you should be talking to them very regularly through the process of buying and guiding them through the next steps in anticipation of, okay, now what? Now what? Now what? Especially the first timer. It's magical in a way because they're not jaded like your move-up buyers can be. Because, if you've ever been through buying a home before, it can be stressful, right?
Yeah, and I also think like every process is different. Every transaction is different. So with the first-time buyer, it's important to understand the type of buyer they are and to set up, like I said, those expectations, right? And so knowing the buyer, what I used to do, and I haven't done it in a while, is I would send a bouquet of balloons to the buyer. I didn't know them. They were like a referral, right? And so I'd send a bouquet of balloons. And if they were like, oh my God, thank you so much for the balloons, and they were really touched by it, then I knew what type of buyer they were. If they were like, hey, thanks for the balloons, then I knew what type of buyer.
Or they were like, ew, balloons. You're like,
balloons.
Okay.
And
that's
so
a really,
I thought it was like
that's
a great
genius
way
idea.
to like vet like what type of person they are without like really
I like that.
digging in deep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's actually a super interesting tool and tactic. I never even thought to do that. See, you learn something new every day in real estate. That's why I love it so much. So let's talk about, I don't know about you, 21 years, 24, 25 years. I have agents who have been in the business for way less time who are like, I hate working with first-time buyers. And when I hear that, it makes my heart hurt because I'm like, okay, that's literally, that could be your entire SOI for the rest of your life is what it should be. But why do you think that they don't like working with first-time buyers?
I mean, I believe like it might be the time commitment. I don't know because I do enjoy working with first-time buyers. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't know the process enough to set first-time buyers up for the expectation.
Right,
of
educating them. And I agree with that fully. And again, they don't like the guiding, the mothering, the nurturing them through. But one of the number one reasons that my agents have told me that they get antsy with first-time buyers is they don't know first-time home buyer programs. And I'm here to tell you, not a lot of people qualify for those first-time buyer programs. It is kind of a bait and switch tactic that a lot of people in the industry use that is not applicable necessarily to buyers. I used to teach the Housing and Neighborhood Development Services HANDS first-time buyer course for Orange County in Florida. And literally we would have like 90 people there like every 6 weeks. I did that for a couple years. And I think of all of those people, although I closed lots of buyers from that class, I think only 3 of them ended up using down payment assistance. And so that is one thing that, let's talk about that. Let's talk about first-time buyer, that little thing that you're dangling.
Yeah, the little carrot.
The carrot, yeah.
And a lot of people, if they do qualify for the program, there's a lot of things that go in that are involved in it.
A lot of red tape. Not a lot, but a little enough.
However, being a first-time buyer isn't one of them.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's the funniest part about it.
Well, and that's what's really funny. So if you're going to go with one of those programs, you just can't currently own a home or have owned one in the past 3 years. And so not technically first-time buyers. But hey, whatever. Stranger things have happened. It is great. Down payment assistance is great, and it's so rewarding to work with people that utilize that program. I mean, literally, so many people through the years, and you've changed their life. Like your person, you can see that they've left a legacy now for their family that they would never have had the opportunity to do. So I love it. But I encourage agents, if that is the one thing that's kind of holding you back, you don't know what to say about first-time buyer programs, learn about it. Work with a lender that will vet them at the same time that they're getting pre-approved for a mortgage, that they're also going to get pre-approved for, down payment assistance. It is a much tighter guideline requirement. They're going to need, that lower DTI, the credit score's got to be a certain thing. There's just a lot of moving parts.
That's the important part about working with a lender that we trust, right? Because then I believe that the lender needs to explain like the pros and cons of being able to use a program like this.
Exactly. And you should, if that's something that you're nervous about, learn about it, get educated about it, understand the pros and cons. And here's the great thing. Even if you get one first-time home buyer who's in that down payment assistance program and you get them closed, you're probably going to learn things a little bit the hard way. I remember one of my agents, it was her first time doing DPA, and she had no idea there was an extra inspection. And so she didn't write that amount of time in the contract. And so I was like, oh, yeah, no, you can't do a 30-day contract for a DPA buyer. Like, that's just, I mean, maybe you can. I've few and far between has it been done, because usually you need that extra time. There's extra things that the program requires that require an actual physical person to go and inspect the home. And so just learning those things, don't be afraid of it. Like, literally learn it and put that feather in your cap and know that you've done it. And it's not always it's gonna be a little squeaky at first, but it's gonna be something that you can do, and don't ever shy away from learning something new. That's the best part about real estate, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Constantly learning.
We don't have the extra inspection for our
You
DPAs
don't?
now.
See, really?
It's always we do learn a lot about how different each state
Well,
works.
and to that point, it's not always for that. It depends on the type of DPA. That you're right. That's for like a county DPA, whereas a Florida bond is a little bit different. There's so many different programs.
And we don't, as agents, we don't need to know all those. That's
right.
why it's
Just
so
know that they're
important.
there, and know that if they can qualify for it, then that is what your trusted lender will tell you.
I'd like to interject something. On the title side, I think a lot of times the first-time home buyers focus on what they have to do to get that assistance to begin with. And they don't realize that then there's also, after they've bought the home, there's requirements. You have to keep it a certain long amount
Or you
of
have to pay
years.
it back.
Or you have to pay it back. And
Depending on the program.
I did one. It was a county program where the buyer had to keep it for, I think it was something like
15
20
years,
years.
15 years
And if
usually.
they didn't, then it was a shared equity. So they had to split the equity with the county, and they didn't, even though they had signed the paperwork, they didn't realize that. And so it actually meant that their proceeds were $60,000 less than what
that
they thought they
crazy
were going to
pants?
get. They still went through with it, but it was something that they had stars in their eyes when they bought the house, and then their needs changed and didn't realize that, oh, no, you have to pay that money back and some.
Well, and that's why it's super important to know what you're signing and know what you're getting into, because it's so weird. Like, sometimes they would do it, and then a couple of years they didn't do that, where you would do this shared equity, but that has happened before.
I haven't heard of us like providing shared equity at all. I mean, there's like low income places, but shared equity though.
Yeah, they
for
stopped
down
doing
payment
that
assistance,
a couple years ago, but it's
Interesting.
part. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's always changing. Grants always change. Programs always change, and it's just one of those things. And I think you just have to know what you're signing.
So let's talk about, like, we have our first time buyers, right? And how do we make the first time buyers forever buyers?
Well, I think just like with my little boy Tucker, you literally do need to nurture them the whole way through and be there, be like an actual guide for them. And not that you'd have to be on call all the time, but you have to set the expectation of what's going on, literally from the moment you meet them until the closing table and then long beyond. And I think that follow-up after closing is one of the hardest things that realtors can't seem to wrap their minds around, because we are always prospecting for new business, right?
Sure.
And so then you forget the people that you had this amazing first-time experience, like, feels like the first time. That is literally, like, to me, I love a first-time buyer because it's so exciting. It always feels like the first time. And I really do encourage you to have like a really solid and long-standing follow-up system with any buyer, but especially your first-time buyers. I'm helping one of my first-time buyers from 15 years ago with his fourth transaction currently right now. I love that.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I honestly, it makes me feel like my life has purpose, right? Like, yo, you like me. No, they trust you. They probably like me too, honestly, pretty likable. But still, they trust you. They know that you're their person because you were there. And what I love about Steve, this is Steve, I love you if you're watching this. He calls me the Willy Wonka of real estate. And I'm like, wait, because I'm a snazzy dresser and I hang out with short people? What's the deal? He said, no, because you make like dreams come true. Because it was so funny. I met him at a first time buyer DPA course. He didn't end up using it after all. But everybody that he had talked to told him that he was not going to be able to buy a house. Everyone. And it was so crazy that he was able to buy it. We were able to help him get there. And it didn't happen immediately. We had to put a little bit of time and energy into it. But I was with him there along the way from the moment we met that day at the DPA class until I think it was about 6 or 7 months later when he finally was signing his mortgage paperwork. So again, that is the reward. It's a long game, but it's a real game of really, really helping people. And when you can help them, they will be loyal to you forever.
Yeah, I believe it's important, as you mentioned, like walking them through the process. That is key. And then having that good feeling at closing. Like nobody likes surprises. That's why I say expectations, set up the expectation. And then for them to have a good feeling at closing, I think that carries the momentum forward.
100%, yes.
And if they have a bad experience at closing, that carries forward.
Yeah.
And so I believe it's important to set them up for the expectation and then have that good feeling at closing.
Right. And guess what? Like you never know what's going to happen. You just have to be willing to roll with the punches. And especially with first timers, you have to remember our job is to absorb information and then gather some solutions and then lay them out for them and help them make the decision, an educated decision, not just be like the telephone game where like you find out something bad and then you're like, this is bad, this is how, because they will freak out and they will maybe not even buy a house if you do that. So you really do have to, something inevitably goes a little haywire every transaction-ish, maybe not every single one, but something is a little off every great now and then. For instance, this isn't a big deal, but one of my first time buyers, he was like, this is the house, Amanda, I know it, it's going to be it, this is it. And we go to the house because of course the photos looked amazing. These catfish glamour shot photos should be against the law. Or actually, can y'all take a photo of me? Because I would love that. But seriously, that is something, that is one of those letdowns because he was convinced it was the place. And I'm like, okay. And then we get there and it's, it was not the place, I should say. So that's what I'm saying. That's not necessarily you didn't do anything wrong in negotiation or any of that. And it had nothing to do with you as an agent. But that's the kind of like, okay, I'm understanding how you're feeling and I'm with you. Like they should take photos of us. That would be great. You have to know that that's part of the gig and help them kind of sort through their emotions in it because it is emotional. They do attach so much emotion to where they're going to lay their head at night because it is, especially for first timers, where they're going to lay their head at night. And it's a lot of money too. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I love about it, right? Is like, this is their experiences. These are the memories that they're going to create in their home. The equity that they're going to make. And that's what I love about it, right? What they build and they create.
Yeah, and understanding what their goals are because I'm working with a first-time buyer now who, even though it's his first time that he's purchasing the house, he actually doesn't want to be in it for that long. He wants to be an investor or a flipper. And so you have to understand their motivation to know that how you can be a best service always, but understand that a couple of the things that he didn't realize about, buying your first home, wanting to be a flipper, that ROI on, because he was looking at kind of like houses that needed some repairs and stuff. And so you have to always know the next step in their journey of real estate and give them that full picture because it's not just about right now or next year. It's about what's their goal and how can you in the future help them get there. And that by trying to know as much as you can at all times about real estate and being that person that they go to.
Yep.
Don't you agree?
Yeah.
So what little last bite do you want to say to the real estate agent who maybe shies away from first timers or feels like they can't educate as well as they should? Because I know we're fighting a battle a lot because people get a lot of misinformation online. And so you have a little last bite for the agent?
I believe it's important as an agent that we gain the knowledge of what the process looks like, right? You and I know because we've been working for so long.
Thousands of transactions. I don't know. It's just...
However, a lot of agents, 5 homes a year.
Or less.
So it's important that we understand what the process is and set up the first-time buyers, set up those expectations of what the process is. Do you meet with your first-time buyers? Do you have a buyer's meeting?
I try to always, but it's so funny. Like people, it's what is the number one variable? It's people. And so it depends on the person. Some people want to meet in the office. Some people only want to text. You have to meet them wherever they're at. Yep. I love a buyer consultation, whether it's on the phone or Zoom or I love an in-person one because then we can look at what's on the market together and then talk about what's off market and what we have access to. It's a really good time to talk to them about new construction or for sale by owner. You don't want to shy away from because you want them to come to you no matter what the house is. And so I love a buyer consultation in person because we can really ooh and ah over houses together.
And I think it's important just to set up the process of what it looks like with earnest money in Colorado. Deposit here, right? So you set them up. So you have the earnest money, then you have the inspection, then you have the appraisal. And it's important to go back to that throughout the process. Okay, now we go under contract. The earnest money is due. Then we do the inspection. And so as long as you keep repeating yourself, then
like a kid, like just
and they hear it
same
over
thing.
and over and over again. So I like the first initial buyer consultation, whether it's over phone call, Zoom, in person.
Yeah, it's so important.
I'll walk the buyers through the entire process, and then I'll still, throughout the process, walk them through what's next.
Yeah, it's so crazy that a lot of buyers and inevitably their agents don't ever touch on the whole upfront investment of buying a house. And I'm like, wait, what? You guys you've looked at 40 houses and you guys never talked about the, maybe upwards of $2,000 that you have to fork over immediately, give or take. Sometimes it's less, but like that's a lot. You should know those things. You should talk about those things because it's not scary.
You don't want to get to a house and they totally fall in love with it. And it's like, okay, earnest money is due. What?
Yeah.
I'm on a down payment assistance program. I need money. Yes. And then
exactly.
And these are the inspections that I recommend. So I think it's important that they know that.
Yeah. And that's your job. You're just educating them on the process, and you give them guesstimates because you're not an inspector, you're not an appraiser, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know about you. I like to do 1% of as the escrow deposit, but that's not always applicable. I have, especially for my DPA buyers, we've done like $500, sometimes $250. It just depends on the motivation and the negotiation and all that good stuff. But you have to.
1% is typical for us too.
Same. So, give or take. But then, with my higher end things, it's like, okay, no, we're going to do 5% or whatnot. So the point is, let them know what you got going on because that's your job. And then that way they know whenever it comes to all things real estate, you're their person to go to. That's how you turn them into a forever buyer. Continually educate them, continually express how it's going. And, don't be afraid to answer questions. But of course, don't answer questions that you don't know the answers to. Get the right answers before you give the wrong answers for sure. One of the ways that I think that we can help you be a little bit more confident when you're explaining the process to a first-time buyer or any buyer really is I want to give away, I've made this little infographic, me and Canva. It's like, I love Canva. So I made this really cool infographic that it's just, it's a map. It's a pathway to purchase. It's barely any words. People hate words, right? So it's just, again, an infographic that shows you the pathway to purchase, and it's going to help guide you, help them guide them through it. What do you think? Good one?
You lead the conversation, right? That helps lead the conversation on what the expectation is. It's expectations.
Setting it, meeting it, exceeding it, hopefully, because real estate is crazy.
And you don't have to be.